How's it going, everybody? RazingHel here, and today we're going to be talking about fire farms and Don't Starve. You may have heard this term bandied about by anybody who's actually been following the game's meta for the past couple of years. It first surfaced about 2 years ago at this point. And one of the things that seems to be a common trend surrounding fire farms is, much like Fight Club, the first rule of them is you don't talk about them. If you ever see somebody reference a fire farm, they'll just throw it out there like, yeah, fire farm, and then they'll leave it at that. They'll never explain more. If you look on the Don't Starve wiki, which is generally considered one of the best sources of all Don't Starve information, you'll never see fire farm referenced on there once. So in other words, it is not very widespread information. But in this video, I'm going to explain what fire farms are and how they work, and then give my opinion after doing so. So the principle behind a lot of fire farms is that you're going to be burning something until it dies, and then it's going to respawn, and then it's going to die again because this stuff is on fire. Now, you might be wondering, how exactly do you maintain this perpetual state of something being on fire? And it is by using the Ice Flingomatics that were introduced in Don't Starve, Reign of Giants. So in most examples, you'll see, as you'll see here, what you have is whatever building spawns down a mob or anything like that, you'll have them surrounded by a whole bunch of flammable material, and you have all that flammable material surrounded by Ice Flingomatics. The number of Ice Flingomatics you need depends on the size of the area, and the entire area should be covered by the Ice Flingomatics range. This doesn't mean that each Ice Flingomatic has to cover the entire range, but there should definitely be some overlap between the various machines that you have to make sure that when it comes time to actually putting the fire out, they can all reach it. So one of the things about this strategy is that by igniting an item and then putting it out immediately, it appears to reset the health. So this might be a little bit counterintuitive to a lot of people, but you don't actually see a reduction in the overall health of an object simply because it was set on fire previously. It seems to default to its initial health even though it was previously on fire. So in other words, you start a pig house on fire, and even though it takes a couple seconds for it to be put out, it still hasn't burnt down. So when it is put out, the next time it catches on fire, it has that same amount of health as it did before. And this is exactly how fire farms work, is they take advantage of this loophole in the system where the health of an item keeps regenerating. So you'll frequently see hay walls used as the catalyst to provide the fire because they're very cheap and they provide excellent density in terms of the fire. You're going to be having fire on just about every single plot on the killing pit area or the fire farm area. So what you do is you ignite it once you have it all set up, and then the whole thing starts on fire. Then the Ice Flingomatics put it all out, and then it flares back up again because one part of it wasn't put out, and then it's just a great big circle of life. And anything that's caught in it that's alive will die. So in other words, you can do this to farm butterflies, because if a butterfly area has butterflies spawning out of flowers and they're caught inside this whole big fire farm pit, they'll die to it, and their drops will not disintegrate. They'll not turn into ashes because they're going to be put out in that relatively short period of time once again. And the same would apply to mobs such as pigs or bunnymen. If they'll exit their house, they'll get killed in the fire, they will respawn in the house, they'll have to exit it again because the house is on fire, they'll go outside, die to the fire. And this is one of the reasons why I consider it to be an exploit, is because by default, pigs are set to respawn from their houses 3 days after you kill them. Bunnymen are set to respawn the next day. But with this exploit, and by using, well, that's basically what it is, you can force the pigs to respawn indefinitely. Because every time you set their house on fire, they exit it, regardless of whether or not they're supposed to be in there. And once they respawn on the map, they die, and then they respawn again and again and again and again. So this can essentially provide you with an unlimited source of meat, or basically whatever it is you're farming. And that gets down to the opinion portion of this episode. Why do people defend it being a legitimate mechanic? When you compare it to just about any other strategy, this is the only one, well, there are a couple actually. This is one of a few that are blatant exploits, in my opinion, and using them doesn't really make you any better than the people who use mods or who use the command prompt to bring things into the world. You'll see among a lot of more veteran players, there's a sort of elitism that is shown towards players who do not play the vanilla version of Don't Starve. And when I say the vanilla, I mean the unmodded version without any hacks or without any command prompt stuff in it that makes the game easier. And yet, I've never really seen this tactic demonized. It is for some reason considered legit, even though the reward from it far outweighs the average reward that you get from killing pigs and stuff like that. Normally, you would not see these sort of results, right? There is no other method that is going to provide you with this unlimited amount of food in the short term like fire farms do. It outstrips in terms of productivity anything else that is available, which in my opinion makes it more of an exploit than anything else. And it also makes it makes whoever uses it essentially the same as the people who are spawning items in with a command prompt or who use mods that make the game ridiculously easy. Sure, you have to work a little bit more towards it, so you're not quite on that same level. Like the mod people and the command prompt people, a lot easier, a lot faster to get that stuff done. But in terms of providing a challenge to the world, it doesn't. It's not that difficult to do. And the amount of reward you reap for the effort you put in is highly disproportionate compared to just about any other form of farming in the game. And I would hope people would understand that. And that was basically one of the reasons why I don't talk about fire farms before. I most recently did cover how to farm bunnymen, and I left out fire farms because I considered it an exploit. And there were people who objected to me leaving it out. They thought that I should include it because it is technically the most advanced form of farming that there is, or the most productive form of farming that there is. And I mean, since the philosophy of the videos that I provide were to demonstrate or showcase alternative and multiple ways of achieving a single objective. It wasn't like your standard videos that I saw for a lot of them, where it'd be, this is the way I'm doing it, and I don't show any other alternative methods of doing this. I wanted to showcase several of them, even though they weren't all necessarily as efficient. They might apply to players in given situations or in different play styles. And I thought that was important. So I could see people making a case for why I should include this simply because it fits my agenda of providing players with additional choice. But at the same time, I just didn't want to see more of this fire farming adopted because it is disproportionately good. It's just astronomically outstrips the amount of productivity or the amount of reward for the amount of effort you put in compared to just about any other way of farming stuff. So that comes down to the viewer then. If you are somebody who watches these videos that I make about Don't Starve, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below how exactly you feel about me including items or tactics, strategies in the game that I would generally consider an exploit. Now, I don't consider a lot of things exploits, but like what I said, when they represent a disproportionate reward for the investment versus just about any other method or any other strategy that you might use to achieve the same outcome, I consider those to be exploits. So, yeah, like I said, you're the ones who are watching it, so I'd like to know what your take is on whether or not I should continue to go along with the philosophy that I was currently using, or if I should go ahead and just include everything, even if it's considered an exploit or even if I would consider it an exploit to the game. I know that might be a little bit controversial for people who don't. I've seen some very militant defense of this tactic. There seem to be people who are quite invested in it, and they'll say that, well, it's legitimate because it hasn't patched it out. And I disagree with that because the reason, more likely than not, that he has not patched this out yet is because it does not affect a lot of the player base. As soon as it affects like 65% of the player base, now all of a sudden 65% of players know about this tactic and they're all using it to farm goods, I think we would pay more attention to it. As it is, not very many people outside of the most dedicated fans of Don't Starve know about it, and therefore it's not going to be on their agenda to fix. It also should be noted that this method does not work quite the same in Don't Starve Together. You're not going to be able to maintain the same fire farm because fire does not spread as quickly and Don't Starve Together. So that sort of provides another case, in my opinion, for why I shouldn't include it, because a lot of people who are going to be watching it now actually are going to be playing Don't Starve Together. And unless I always make that distinction that certain things don't work and Don't Starve Together, it could mislead them into believing that this would be a viable tactic. And then they spend a lot of time and effort building it. And once it's built, they will find out it doesn't work because of the fire spread rates. They're different in Don't Starve to the point where it's no longer quite as practical to do anymore. It's not going to be sustainable the same way it is in the single player. So like I said before, that is how the fire farm works. Those are my opinions on it. I'd like to get your take as a viewer, what your opinion is, whether or not I should be covering these. If I missed anything, I didn't explain anything in this video quite succinctly or quite concisely enough, let me know as well, because I think one of the general trends that I see with a lot of Don't Starve tutorials is the presenter does not explain very well what is going on. They will either just show something happening and not explain anything, or they'll throw up text on the screen. But there's very seldom that you'll see a video on YouTube for Don't Starve that actually explains, that has the person explain everything about why this is happening and how it happens. I would hope that that would be an advantage that my content would have over the others. That would give me a reason to continue to create a content like this when it has technically been done a couple of times already in the past 4 or 5 years that Don't Starve has existed. Anyways, I've been going on here for too long. Thank you very much for watching as always, and I hope to see you next time.